Okay, everybody, I'm just jumping into a question that Ahmed had, and then I'll go through a more general review. So the first thing you would do, this is page 19 in unit 1. So the first thing you do to get this into rectangular form, because you can't subtract it like this, right? You need to multiply by cosine first. So 15.9 cosine 142.6. That'll give you negative 12.6. Yeah, I'm assuming you got the same thing. And then you do the same thing with sine. So 15.9 sine of 142.6. That'll give you this.
Mr.
Yes.
Yes, the R is 20, it's the same, but the problem with the angle.
At the end.
Yes, at the end, I have the R20 and the first solution page is 20, but the problem with the angle, I don't know how to
Let me
solve.
see if I can probably bring up the solution. It'll be faster, actually.
Yes.
And then we can check. Because again, there's lots of stuff I want to review. And if we spend all our time on one question, it won't help so much. But this page, yeah?
I think so. Yes, yes.
This one, yeah?
How
Okay.
it's 200?
How did he get this?
Yes.
Okay, well, the big idea here is that this angle, so when you get this answer, yeah? And when you
Yes.
do that, you'll notice it's left and down. So it must be in quadrant 3. We call this quadrant 3. In order to get an angle there, you know, when you use your tan, you'll get this. You
Yes.
went through that tan of the
B over A.
the real side, you got this. Well, if it's in quadrant 3, you need to do 180 plus that angle that you got. So you need to add 180 to this, and that's what gives you 203. Because remember, the final answer needs to be from here down to here. So the angle it gives you is just that small angle right here.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives you the tiny angle called a reference angle. You need to add 180. And I gave you the rules for how to remember those before.
Okay, so it's if it's in the part 1, you didn't add anything, right?
Correct? If
Part
it's in
2,
the second part, 180
yes.
minus the angle.
Yes.
If it's in the third part, 180 plus the angle. If it's in the fourth part, 360 minus the angle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so hello everybody. I just was going through a question that Ahmed had on some of the review stuff. What I want to do in terms of the review is I want to go through some of the review questions that were posted on D2L, because there's tons and tons and tons and tons of practice in the notes that we didn't cover, and all of it is perfectly fine. All of it could be asked, but they're all similar questions, right, to the ones that we've done. The reason I'm going through the review book is just a lot faster to cover different types of problems at the same time. So before I get into that, I want to make sure that everyone's clear, like crystal clear, on what I'm expecting for this test, and then we'll get into the review. So I'll go as quickly as I can without being unclear. And if you have questions, please ask me for clarification, okay? So first of all, I sent this as an email. Today we're going through, there's lots of review. You can see here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different review booklets. They all have similar questions if they're from the same unit. We'll go through some of those today. Of course, not all of them because there's too many questions. So there's similar questions in there. And then I'm going to go through word problems, which I know you need help with. But I want to get to the test. The test itself is, of course, tomorrow. It says the time is during class. The duration is 1 hour and 30 minutes. That's plus 10 minutes to scan and submit. So really duration is 1 hour, 40 minutes. The Dropbox closes after 1 hour and 40 minutes. I'm not providing extensions, okay? Some of you got lucky and you got a little extra time at the end just to fix some Dropbox stuff. That's not going to happen for the test. It's just weighted too much. It needs to be locked down heavily, okay? So you need to manage your time. What I will say is that the format here is in 2 forms. There's a D2L quiz part. You'll notice I'm looking at this. There's a D2L quiz and there's a long answer part in the Dropbox. And so the most important thing you need to know right now is that for tomorrow's test, there are 2 things you need to do. This is not complicated, but it's very important. The first bit, you need to open the D2L quiz. It'll say test 1, okay? D2L quiz has all the multiple choice in it. You need to open that within the first 20 minutes or else you're not going to be able to do the quiz. It only opens for the first 20 minutes. So make sure you open it. Once it's open, you have an hour to do it, okay? If you need an hour to do the multiple choice, which you shouldn't, it's only 10 questions. You should probably need 10 minutes maximum, okay? So the first part is the D2L quiz. The second part is the Dropbox. That has your long answers. So just think of it like a normal test with your multiple choice and your long answer questions. You just have the two parts in two different places. So just open the quiz to do the D2L multiple choice, and then open the Dropbox. You can open them at the same time if you want to get the assignment type stuff, the long answer stuff that you'll write out, okay? Long story short, and it's all written here, and I'll read it so we're very clear on this. Multiple choice is accessed as a D2L quiz. It closes after 1 hour. So it has 1 hour for you to complete the quiz. Once you open it, you have an hour. You have to access it within the first 20 minutes though. It's locked after that. 4 long answer questions. They're accessed through the Dropbox, just like your assignments. And just make sure you finish that within the end of the classroom period. Plus 10 minutes just to make sure you get everything done. Okay, that's the big idea. Everything else is just a little extra information, but really, if you open the D2L quiz and you open the Dropbox and you get it all done, then you're done. There's nothing fancy going on here, okay? And it's all happens during class time. So is there anything I can clarify on that? Because tomorrow's too late to be asking me questions at like 30 minutes after the test has started, right? Any
4 questions with 4 pages or not?
So the long answer questions, there's 4 questions.
Yes.
I don't know if they're all on the same page or not. It's just, you just need to finish the 4 questions.
No, I mean, you want 4 papers, like 4 photos?
It's easier for me if you do that, but it's up to you how you want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier for me if you split them up because I can see the question and then I can just move on to the next page. So it's better for me if you put 1 question per page when you're doing the long answer. But again, I'll figure it out.
Okay.
I just want to keep it simple. So as long as you do the multiple choice and you do the Dropbox long answer, then you're okay, okay? Any other questions? Clear? I hope it's clear. It's not meant to be complicated. The reason that there's 2 parts is because the multiple choice are all randomized. So everyone has different questions, right? Not meant to confuse you. Okay. I'm going to take this as things being clear, and I want to start the review. Now, the reviews that I'm going through are all on D2L. I posted this yesterday, but they've been there from the beginning of the year. The only thing that I added for today was I made some new word problems for Unit 3 so that you have, okay? So if we don't have any other questions, I want to jump straight to a very specific type of problem, and that's, you can find this in the test 2 review, which on D2L was this one, Unit 3 review. It's called test 2 review on the document itself because I changed the title, but really it's the Unit 3 review. It used to be a second test, right? So anyway, many of you had a lot of trouble finding the equation on the assignment. So you were given some information and I asked you to find the equation that it would have been. So for example, given information about a ellipse, give me back the equation. And some of you left it totally blank. You knew how to do it so little. And so I want to cover those questions first. So let's see, this one's given the equation, not interested. Okay, what is the parabola's equation with a vertex of -5, -4, and a directrix of y equals 1? So this is almost directly from some of your, so I'm gonna be doing a lot of like questions. I'm gonna do as many as I can. So just stop me if you need me, but otherwise you can just watch the video, okay? Vertex is at -5 and 4, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a vertex here. And the directrix, which is a straight line, is at y equals 1. So at y equals 1, you draw a line that goes across here. And what that tells you is the p-value. Whoa, why is that so big? What that tells you is the p-value. What's p here? You just count the distance. What's the distance from -4 to 1 in the y direction? Well, it's 5. So p is 5. That means that 4p must be 5 times 4, or 4 times 5, which is 20. So the reason I care about this is, of course, this is a parabola. What does it look like? Well, if the directrix is above it, the parabola must open downwards, okay? So if it opens downwards, this p-value actually is negative. So let me put this all together. Why am I doing this? Because it's an x squared form. Looks like this. That's what the equation is for an x squared form parabola, which is the one I normally give you. It's a little bit easier, a little more familiar. Where's the vertex? Well, it's at -5 and 4. So I keep telling you, when you get problems like this, there's only two things you really need. You need the vertex, and you need the p-value, or more often than not, you need the 4 p-value, okay? So let's put it all together. X minus h. H here is -5. So x minus -5 is x plus 5 squared. What's 4p? 4p is -20. 20 we got from the distance, and negative because it's going down. So -20. And then y minus 4. Y minus the y value of the vertex. That question's finished. So some of you had a really hard time with that on the assignment. You can see that it's not a long question. You just need to know what P means. P is the distance from the vertex to the directrix or the vertex to the focus. Any questions? Let me make this just a different color. Y plus 4, y plus 4. Yeah, sorry, I was looking at this. I wrote plus by accident, so yes, plus 4. Thank you. Maybe I did that on purpose to make sure you're awake. I didn't. I made a mistake. But that's the big idea, okay? That's how you get the equation of a parabola. It's not difficult. Honestly, it's not that difficult. So you've seen it on the assignment, now you've seen it here again. We good? Move on? I want to cover lots and lots, of course. So any question on this review is important. They're all useful. They're all things you've seen before. Just make sure that if I don't cover it, look at the answers. All the answers are online. They're all, I even posted them in the front of the news feed for you. So all you need to do is take a look and see. For those who are wondering, they look like this. So you'll, is this the one? No, this isn't the same. Anyway, I don't want to confuse anybody, but they're all there. All right, yeah, the second page. So when you look at the review, you'll see I just did this. Same basic idea, okay? Just so you're not confused by that. Okay, let's keep going. I want to do the getting the equation ones first. Okay, so in this case, let's do a review of this one. What is the center and radius of a circle that looks like this? Well, we know it's a circle because the squared terms have coefficients that are the same in front. And we need to complete the square to do this. So what we're going to do is group the x's. We're going to group the y's. And then the other side is equal to a number. We take out a common factor. Should get this. I'm going to leave some space as I normally do. Take out a common factor here. Leave some space. And now I need to complete the square. Divide the middle number by 2 and square it. So here I get 4. That gives me an 8 on this side. Why is it 8? Because 2 times 4 gives 8. On the other side, 16 divided by 2 and squared. That's 64. 2 times 64 is 128. So when you do this, you should get 2. Divide this middle number by 2. This is not new. So I'm just going through it as a review. And here we have y plus 8 squared equals 6 plus 8 plus 128. What's that? 142. All right, and now what's the last thing I need to do? The very last step. Well, on the right side here, it should be 1. So we divide everything by 142. Everything. Every term. So 2 divided by 142. Wait. This is a circle. This is a circle. So we divide everything by 2. because for a circle, we need the number on the right. We need nothing in front of the x squared terms. What we end up with is x minus 2 squared plus y plus 8 all squared, and then 142 divided by 2 is 71. So what's the center and the radius? The center, you can read it straight from the equation. It's 2, negative 8. The radius is just the square root of this 71. So I'll just say root 71. How is that? Anyone have any questions on that? I'm going to be doing a lot of questions today, as many as I can possibly fit in. All good? I think that's the same as, sorry, I've got a lot of reference sheets open just to make sure that I don't get any mistakes in the workings, because obviously that'll just confuse you later. But to me, let me see. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know how I got 16 here. I'm just going to make a quick change. It's supposed to be 6 plus 36. Sorry. The basic idea is the same, but I made a mistake in my workings. 72, 6 plus 8 plus 72. Wait. 18. I'm sorry, everybody. There we go. 2 times 9, 18. That'll work out on this side to be 32. Again, the concept was the same. I just made one mistake in the numbers, and it made everything else mess up, which is why I usually try to make sure I have all the notes perfectly in front of me. But the concept's the same. And you'll notice that when I mark your work, I very rarely take off marks if you made one mistake at the beginning and kept going. I'll say like, okay, by follow through, or still okay. I still give marks for that because everyone's human, right? But the concept's the same. Ahmed, you said 64 question mark. I don't know, maybe that relates to what I said before.
Can you do it again? From where you get the 4? The blue 4?
Okay. So this 4?
Yes.
So the way you complete the square is you take this number in the middle, divide it by 2, and then square it. Divided by 2 gives 2, and square it gives 4. Same thing here. You take this number, you divide it by 2, you get a 3. You square it, you get this 9.
Okay.
For the second step, you'll take this middle number and divide it by 2 to get this. You'll take this middle number and divide it by 2 to get this. Okay, any other questions? Really sorry about making that mistake in the algebra there. Again, I'm going to try to cover as many different things as I can. Unit 3 stuff, Unit 2 stuff, Unit 1 stuff. I might not get to all of it, but I'm trying to get where I can. Okay, let me know if you need to go back. This is given the equation. Let's see. This question 5 I would not give. It's too complicated. So I'm going to scroll down. This is given the equation, given the equation, given the equation. All right. What is the equation of a hyperbola with a center at 0, 0, a vertex at 0 and 4, and a focus at 0 and 6? So many students are bad at these. So let's get it done. Center at 0, 0. So right away, I'm going to write down that center is 0, 0, just so I have it there clearly. All right. Vertex at 0, 4. I'm going to draw a little picture. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my vertex. So vertex is at 0, 4. I'll need that later in my formula probably. And a focus at 0 and negative 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's my focus. Now, why does it give us focus? So students are always confused by this, but you need to remember the reason it gives it is because you should know what the focus is. There's only 3 things. There's A, B, and C. A is the distance between your vertices on your transverse axis, your main axis, so we don't need that right now, or at least not at this point. B is the distance for your conjugate axis, your sort of smaller axis. C is the distance from the vertex to the focus. So this is C. And if you count the distance here, sorry, from the center, I don't want to mess that up. C is the distance from the center to the focus. And so in this case, C is 6. So we have C. We'll also have A. What's A? A is the distance from the center to the vertex. So A is 4. If you have A and C, then you also have A squared and C squared, because you square them. And if you've been following what we've been doing in this unit, you should know why I need those things, because I need to fit it into the general formula. So let's see, that's a vertex. That means the up and down direction is the type of hyperbola we have. And so I'm going to write out the general form. It's a y first type. It's a y first type. The reason I know that is because it's in the up and down direction. The transverse axis is in the up and down direction. So I need to find all these pieces: h, k, a squared, b squared. Students were doing all sorts of crazy stuff trying to find A, B, and C on the assignment. I think you just didn't understand the question. In this case, we have A squared and C squared. I need B squared. So our general formula is this. C squared equals A squared plus B squared. Rearrange it for B squared. And then you have C squared and A squared. So that's 36 minus 16 is 20. All right, so let me summarize. You have your X value for the center. So you have H, you have K. You also have A, and now we have B. B squared, I should say. So you just fill it in. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in over here. So it's y, well, it's just y squared because the center's at 0, 0. Y squared over 16 minus x squared over 20 equals 1. Done. The most important part, I think, is this. You need to know how to get C and A from your diagram. Everything else follows from that. Do you have any questions for me? So I'll make a note here. We know it's a y first type because the distance from center to vertex and the focus is up and down, is vertical. And so if we know that the y comes first here, the formula, because the vertex is up and down. That's what tells us. The direction that it goes from the center to the focus of the vertex tells us what type of equation we have. All right, I'm going to move on to 10. An ellipse has vertices at 4 and 410. The formula sheet is on D2L. So you should have that available to you before you start. So if you go into the D2L shell and go to content, and then go into course information, and scroll down a little bit, there's formula sheet there. If I remember, I'll put it on the back of the test. I don't remember, you're gonna have to just go look at that. But this is, you can get it from here, okay? So, take a picture, do whatever you need to do, write it down on a paper and put it on the back of your wall or something, I don't know. Okay, so 10. Vertices at 4, 0, and 4, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have vertices here and here. That right away, if the vertices are there, vertices is the major axis. And so we have almost all of our information already. That is the length of the major axis. That is the length 2A. And the distance from those, between those, is 10. I can see that right now. I'm looking at it, it's 10. So the distance is 10. That means A is 5. And if I know what A is, I know that A squared is that squared, 25. So I already have my A. My focus is at 4 and 2. So my focus is right here. The distance now from the center, well, okay, let's not get ahead of myself. Where is the center? right? Because let me write out the ellipse form. This is a y, major axis is in the y direction. So let me write out the general formula so that we can all talk about the same thing. Midpoint of the vertices. So Ali, excellent. The midpoint of the vertices is the center. So again, we need to find the center in order to complete this equation. I have a squared. I can get b squared fairly easily. But let's talk about the center for a second. The center, or more importantly, the y point of the center, is the midpoint of the vertices. So just take 0 and 10. Those are your y. Add them together, divide by 2. That gives you the midpoint. It's the average, also known as the midpoint. That's just 5. So the center must be at 4, 5. So now I have my center. And then if that's at 4, 5, 4 and 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I know my distance between the center and C. Or I should say, I know the distance from the center to the focus. Just look here. The focus is at 4 and 2. The center is at 4 and 5. The distance between them must be the distance between 2 and 5. So 3. So in other words, C equals 3 here. If you make a good diagram, it should be clear. All right, so I'm kind of running out of space, but let's see. That means that C squared equals 9. Okay, what's my fancy equation to find C stuff for ellipses? Well, it is C squared equals A squared minus B squared. So some students were messing that up. They were just throwing in any random sign. A squared minus B squared for ellipse. I'm looking for B. So B squared is A squared minus C squared in this case. That means B squared is 25 minus 9, which is 16. Okay, now I have everything. If you don't believe me, I'll highlight them. A squared, B squared, H, and K. And I'll put them all into my formula to get my answer. So the final answer is H minus 4 squared over, again, the X is the minor axis, so B in this case is 16, plus Y minus 5 squared all over 25 equals 1. Some students like to put the Y first. I understand why. I understand why you would want to do that, and it's completely correct if you do. You're allowed to put the Y first. But many, many students on the assignment got these backwards. So you need to know the difference. How do you know the difference? The direction of the vertices tells you your major axis. So in this case, the vertices are up and down. So the major axis is Y, which means the A value goes under the Y. Okay, these are some of the longer questions, which I wanted to get them out of the way first. The other review is a little faster. Any questions on this so far? Again, just watch the video again. I've done these questions a few times. None of them are always exactly the same as itself. But remember the key points. Figure out which one's your major axis. That one relates to A, and then figure out what A is, then square it. C is one that students are always missing. C is always the distance from the center to the focus. So no matter what it looks like, it could be sideways, up and down, whatever, find the center, and then find out how far you are from that to the focus. Oftentimes the sketch helps you instead of trying to figure out all the math. You know, don't try to memorize too much, try to understand. Okay, let's move on. Identify the following conics. I gave you tricks for this, maybe you'll remember them. The first one, what is it? Well, I can see that there's a 2y squared and a x squared, but more importantly, I see a minus between them. If one is positive and one is negative, right away I know that that's a hyperbola. So that would be a good multiple choice. I'm not saying that it is a multiple choice. I'm just saying that it would make a good multiple choice. The next one, let's see, take 5 seconds to figure it out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're right, it's a circle. How do I know it's a circle? I know it's a circle because the squared term here and the squared term here both have the same number in front of them, which in this case is a 1. So they have the same number in front, both have 1 in front. We know it's a circle. This next one is a little tricky. It's trying to confuse you because look, we have a squared term here, and a squared term here with a minus. We also have this. So let's rearrange, let's move that to the other side so that nothing gets too confused. We have 18x minus 12y, 1y squared minus 4y squared is minus 3y squared plus 3 minus 3x squared equals 15. So this is a case we haven't seen before, but hopefully it makes sense. This still has the same number in front of it. Even though they're both minus, it doesn't matter. We could multiply everything by a -1. It wouldn't change anything. So yes, Zara was right. It's a circle, 100%. It's a circle. That's a bit tricky. I'm not sure I would give one like that because I just want you to know the fundamentals. But if you knew that that was a circle, it means that you're at a higher level. So that's a great thing. Okay, that's a circle. Many, many students look at it and think that it's a hyperbola, but they don't simplify it first. Okay, so that's a circle. I'm going to try 12. Yeah, good job, Zara. I'm going to try 12. A road passes through a tunnel in a mountain. The walls of the tunnel are defined by a parabola with this equation. So I'm going to draw just a quick sketch. It looks like this. Y equals x minus 8 minus x squared. Both x and y are measured in meters. Can a truck 3.5 meters wide and 4.5 meters high pass through this tunnel? So there's a number of ways to do this question. I'm curious which way you're thinking about this. Does anyone have any ideas what I need to do? Well, let's think about it this way. We want to know, can a truck that's wide and high pass through the tunnel? So I'll just write it here. If we have a truck, so this is looking at the back of the truck, because we're going through the center of the tunnel. I should probably fix this diagram. It should really be like that. We want the truck to go straight through. We're looking at the back of the truck. So let's just assume that this is the back of the truck, okay? We know that the truck is 4.5 meters high, and we know that the truck is 3.5 meters wide. So really, we want this truck to kind of go straight through the center. And so the distance of the truck, if it goes straight through the center, we only really need to care about half of the truck on either side. Because again, if we're going through the center, on the right side, you have half of 3.5, and on the other side, you have 3.5, right? The truck is going to be about 3.5 wide, so we need to check left and right of that by half. I hope that this is making at least some sense to you. So I'll write this down. We're going to check a point here. What's 3.5 divided by 2? Well, it's 1.75. And I want to know if that was the truck, at what point would it touch? What's the height there? You know, I want to make sure that the height of the tunnel is at least 4.5 meters high, or else this truck is not going to get through. I could check the other side too, but I'm not going to because of the negative situation. So this shouldn't be that new to you. Almost always when we have parabolas, we're going to have this width and we divide it by 2, and we check something with that. So let's just recap. Our equation is this. Both x and y are measured in meters. Can a truck 3.5 meters wide and 4.5 meters high pass through this tunnel? So I want to check that x value. So I'm going to ask, what is y when x equals 1.75? Just put it in your equation. Y equals 8 minus 1.75 squared. Y equals If you do that out, you get 4.94 meters. That means that is at the point 1.75, the tunnel is 4.94 meters high. I'll ask you, can the truck make it through the tunnel? Careful. Remember what we're asking. The curve here is describing the tunnel. At that distance, the tunnel is 4.94 meters high. The truck is only 4.5 meters high. So really what we'll have is we kind of have a truck that will look like this. I'll erase this in a second. But if you were to put the truck inside here, sorry, my mouse is not working. Okay, there we go. The truck would only be this big, really. And so it would fit. It would go down, it's a tiny little tunnel, but the truck would fit. Okay, because the height here is only 4.5. So hopefully that makes sense. I'll write it out so that you can see what I mean. This is bigger than 4.5. So the tunnel is higher than the truck. The truck can pass through. So really, you know, it's a parabola. We need to just put in a point and figure out what is going on with that point. In this case, we needed to know the width of the truck, and we divide it by 2 so we can check one of the x points. One of your questions in the chat right now was, is that the vertices? The vertex for parabolas, it only has one vertex. It's right here at the top. So in this case, it would be 0 and 8. But we didn't need it. So I'm not going to complicate it. In a different problem, we would care more about it. This is a special case where we didn't need it because we already had the equation. Okay, so actually not a lot of work, but a lot of thinking. That's why on the test, there's only 2 word problems. There's going to be a word problem from conics, and there's going to be a word problem from functions. Okay, you good on this? Can I move on? Going once, going twice. I'll move on. If you have other questions, please let me know. I can always go back. I made a special extra problem sheet for you, which I meant to post, but because I did it so last minute, for now we're just going to have to look at it here, but I'll post it online today, okay? So just have a separate notebook or something to write this down. I just wanted to make these for you to get you fully prepared for the test. So let's read this. A train tunnel is in the shape of half an ellipse, which we can see here, that's half an ellipse, and 30 feet wide. So this distance here is 30 feet. The highest point of the tunnel is 18 feet above the ground. Okay, so what else do we have? We know that this is 18 feet above the ground. Find an equation that describes the shape of the tunnel. If you understand ellipses, this will be extremely easy for you, okay? We can see right now that the major axis of the ellipse is 30. So 2a must be 30. That means a is 15. That means a squared is, what's 15 squared? 225. All right, I'm going to put that to the side. What is the length of the minor axis? Or in other words, what's b? B is the distance from the center to the minor axis. It is 18, it's written right there. Ali, careful with that. What you've been given, Ali, is only half of this. So if that's 18, the total would be 36. Yeah, I think you saw it. I think you see it now. So B is given directly, it's 18. We're assuming that the center is right here, yeah? That's the most logical. Always put the center at the center of the ellipse. And then that means b squared, what is whatever 18 squared is, which is 324. Okay? Those are enough to fully describe the ellipse, because an ellipse has the formula that looks like this. If you don't have it memorized, just look it up in the table. And I have A and B. I also have H and K because they're 0. So the final answer is x squared over A squared, 225, plus y squared over 324 equals 1. Okay, that is my part A. Okay, that's part A. I did exactly what I always do. I look for A squared, I look for B squared, and I put them into the equation with the center points. Now remember, I didn't need to get C here. You only get C if you don't have A or B squared. You know, if you only have A squared, then you got to go find C and figure out B, something like that. But we didn't need that. So don't be afraid of not having found C, because it's an intermediate point. For word problems with the center points, always be at 0, 0. Not necessarily. For an ellipse, though, you want to put it at the center. It's often 0, 0 because I want to make it simple, but there's 1 or 2 cases where it might not be. So we'll see. I'll try to do some more examples on it. So B. Part B. We need to drive a train 16 feet wide through the center of the tunnel. What is the maximum possible height of the train? So what is the biggest height that the train can have before it touches the ceiling? Okay, so let's see. 16 feet wide. So once again, this is like our previous question. We have this train. Which is 16 feet wide. And I guess what we want to do is we want to drive it through the tunnel. So we're kind of saying we want the train to be able to fit like that at the maximum possible height. So I'm just going to draw a quick sketch because it helps me think. We only need to check a point to the side. We need to check a point over by 8 feet. So we want to check over 8 feet and see what the height is. In other words, y equals something when x equals 8. The 8 is 16 divided by 2. We have the width of the train. It's going to go straight through the center of this. We need to check a point though, so we just check a point on the side, which is 8. What's the maximum possible height that the train can be and still pass through? So put it into the equation. It's 8 squared divided by 225 plus y squared over 324 equals 1. Okay, 8 squared divided by 225 is 0.284 plus y squared over 324 equals 1. That means y squared equals 324. 1 minus that is 0.716 or so. I'm rounding quite a lot. That means y squared is, we multiply that by 324, is 231.84 or so. And so what's the square root of that? The algebra part I'm doing quickly because you should already know that. That's not really what this course is about. That will give something about 15.2 feet. So why did I do that? Well, again, I'm trying to figure out what is the maximum possible height this train can have and still be able to pass through the tunnel. Well, if its width is 16 feet, if it goes right through the center, that means there's 8 feet on the right side, 8 feet on the left side. So just check a point 8 feet away and see what the height of the tunnel is at that point. And that's what this would be. So of course, this train would like squeak on through, it would be perfectly sized. It wouldn't make any sense in real life, but that is the maximum height. So if you're designing a train to go through this tunnel, you have to make sure that the height of the train is definitely less than 15.2. So that's the big idea here. Do we have any questions on that? I'm just going to make it so it's a little bit better fit on the page. Okay, I know I'm going through them quickly, but I want to cover a lot. So I'm going to keep saying that. All right, let's do a similar but different one. This one's actually a little shorter, just a little different. You're trying to design an elliptical running track. You want the inside area of the track to be 20 meters long. And let me label this. You want this to be 20 meters long, and you want it to be 12 meters wide. So this is 12 meters in width. I know it usually width is this way in length, you know, just the longer one is the length. The track itself is 2 meters wide, so that's important. Yeah, of course I'll save the video. I always record all the videos. Yeah, I'll post this online, don't worry. Find the equation that represents the outside edge of the running track. So once again, this is an ellipse. So really, we care about 4 things: h, k, a squared, b squared. So remember, this is really what I care about. We can see that it's stretched in the x direction. So that will have x squared over b squared form, or x squared over a squared form, plus y squared over b squared equals 1. How do I know that the center is not going to make a difference? Well, because I'm choosing the center to be at the center of this. There's no reason to choose anything else. It makes no sense to choose anything else. So let's be very careful here. What is the length of the major axis, including the running track? We want the equation that represents the outside edge. So 2b is going to be 20, but there's an extra distance on each side. Let me be clear here. This is an extra 2 meters. And this is an extra 2 meters. So really I need to add not just 2, I need to add 4. And that's why this question is slightly different, but it's actually easier in a lot of ways. So be careful, it's a tricky one. This is 2a, I don't know why I wrote b. 2a. So 2a equals 24. That means a is 12. That means a squared is 144. I can put that in my equation. The minor axis. Minor axis. Let's go and do the same idea. The length of the minor axis, what is it? 12 plus 2 on top plus 2 on bottom. It's not 7. 2b. I'm not looking for b. I'm looking for a 2b. Let's see. 12 plus 2 plus 2. Yeah, maybe I should have done that in the other case as well. I will. I'll call this plus 2 and plus 2, just to be clear. That means 2b equals 14, 16. So b is 8. Yeah. B squared is 8 squared, 64. And now I'm done. So this is a nice, easy problem if you understand this setup. If you were to miss the addition of the 2's, you wouldn't lose all the marks. You would probably lose 1 mark, maximum 2 marks out of 5. All of these are going to be worth 5, okay? So just make sure you understand how to do these questions. That's why I'm doing the review now, so you get more practice. You should be okay. 144 plus y squared over 64 equals 1. So that's our final answer. That would describe this running track. It's enough to describe the whole outside in all directions. Okay. So I'm going to keep moving on. I know you don't have this posted on D2L right now, but at least you'll have the video saved. Any questions along the way here? Okay, I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to do all of these. I want to make sure I review the first 2 units of it too. Let's see. I've just got two more. You're at the opening entrance to a giant parabolic room made for testing reflection of sound waves. The curved wall is 80 feet away from the center of the opening. So this is the opening. We'll say that this is 80 feet away. That's the curved wall is 80 feet away from the center. We'll call the center right there. That means that the vertex, we already know this, the vertex must be at 0, 80. The opening is 150 feet across. That means that it must be 75 feet on each end. This looks familiar. We've done ones like this before. If this is 75 feet, well, this must be the point, 75 and 0. And the other point would be negative 75 and 0, but we don't need it. Find an equation describing the curved wall. We need the vertex, and we need, you guessed it, 4p. Same thing as we did before. So let's do part A. How do we get 4p? Well, first of all, let's write down the general equation. What's the general equation? Well, this is an x squared form parabola, and I know actually p is negative, but I'll let the math do that for me. This is an x squared form. So I'm going to write x squared equals 4p y squared. The center is at 0, 0, so I don't need to write h and k. It would be a waste of time. Substitute in the point 75 and 0. Because that's a point I know on it, it will allow me to solve for 4p. So that's 75 squared equals 4p times 0. Wait. That's not, okay. Let me see what's happening here. Okay, I see what happened. I made a mistake with the vertex. The vertex isn't 0, 0. The vertex is up at 0, 80. All right, this is what happens when I do it a little bit too quickly. So add that in. The formula should, of course, include the vertex if it's not at 0, 0. The vertex is up here. I was mixing it up with ellipses. I need to worry about the vertex, not the center. Okay. There's a lot to keep in mind. Obviously, we're all human. Do the best that you can. I'm not going to take off 1 billion marks if you miss one or two things. You should know that. If you leave the question blank, though, there's not much I can do. Okay, so sorry about that mistake. That gives 0 minus k, and the k is 80 in this case. Just so you're clear, k is this guy. And solve that. That means that 4p is actually 75 squared divided by negative 80. And that means that 4p is negative 70.3. That's what I'll put in. And so that gives me the formula x squared equals negative 70.3 y minus 80 all squared. Sir, I didn't square the 80. No, I didn't. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, I always make this mistake because I don't know why it haunts me. The general equation doesn't have a squared there. And I've made that mistake probably 20 times in the last week. This was a mistake. There's no formula, there's no square there. Let me show you. In parabolas, this is just me being silly. These are our two forms. I'm using this form. There's no square here. That's my bad. I'm trying to do too much too fast. So that's my mistake. There's no square there on the parabola. So there's no square. And then it works out okay. So my bad. Sorry about that. For part B, it says, where should you stand if you want to shoot a sound wave 60 feet perpendicular to the opening? So it means that we need to shoot at 60 feet. Where do we stand so that from the opening to the wall would be 60 feet? So what it means what is the position in the x direction when the distance to the wall is 60? So we just put that into our equation. What's x when y is 60? Well, x squared is negative 70.3. Y is 60 minus 80. And there shouldn't be a square there. I just finished talking about that. That means that x squared is negative 70.3, 60 minus 80, 1406. That means that where you should be standing is square root of that, 37.5. So I wanted to get that on the page, and now I'll talk about it. Again, it's saying, where should you stand if you want to shoot a sound wave 60 feet perpendicular to the opening? So we need to be standing somewhere like right here and shoot the sound wave up this way. And that should give us some value x. And the distance to the wall was 60. Okay, that is why this works out the way it is. And that ends up being 37.5 feet away from the center. So it turns out in this case exactly halfway. Is that exactly halfway? What a coincidence. Okay, so I don't mean to go through this too fast, but I wanted to get as many examples done on it as I could. All right, any questions on that? I know there's a lot to keep in mind, but I hope they're at least helping. We've done probably 4 or 5 different parabola problems now. So hopefully it makes some sense. Okay, I'll just wait one more second for a question. I wish that it would say if someone's typing. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So now we've covered word problems and finding the equation. Now I want to go through just some general cases from the beginning. I'll go back to complex numbers for a little while. Oh, by the way, before I forget, I want to make sure that this is part of the video in case I don't get a chance to post it. This is a very similar question as what we saw before. I just want to make sure you can look at this and give it a try. The answer that you should get, by the way, I'll start the problem for you so that you have a chance. The center in this case, or the axis you should use, is like this. And the vertex here, we're going to say this is the center. You're going to say the vertex is here. In this case, we have walls that are 300 feet apart. So this distance here is 300 feet. We know that the vertical height here is 60 feet. It's given in the question. And then there's a thickness of 8 feet between the walls here. And it's asking to find the equation of the reservoir and the height of the reservoir at a point 25 feet from the center. So let me just write in the important points. You would know that this is 150 and 60 if you worked out the solution. And with that would be enough to figure out the question. A would be find the equation. Part B would be find what y is when x equals 25. And I'll post my solution for this later, okay? I just wanted you to have it there. So make sure you have this, take a picture, go to YouTube, watch it again, whatever you need to do. But I want to recap a few things. Okay, so back in the beginning here, complex numbers, you remember these guys? I want to try a few questions off this sheet. And these are sort of questions that would be important for multiple choice. So I'm not going to go through everything. The full solutions are already online. You should be able to handle all of these. None of them are long. I've got some tricks for you, so let me go through it slowly. The first one here, you need to remember your J rules. So remember, J to a 1 is J. J squared is -1. J to the power of 3 is negative J. J to the power of 4 is 1. And so on. So I can do this one very fast, actually. This is the same thing as J to the power of 4 and j to the power of 3, which would be 1 times negative j or negative j. So you should review how to get those. You know, the first thing, you should make sure that you know what's the highest power of 4 or multiple of 4 that fits into this. It would be 72. So I think of this and say, hey, this is the exact same thing as j to the power of 72 times j to the power of 3. And j to the power of 72 is the exact same thing as this because they're the same multiple. They're multiples of 4. You can just go back to the smallest version, which is j to the power of 4, and then simplify it. What's the polar form of this? Could be given the graph only. I'm going to do this one, actually. Let's just say you were given a graph. This is a very big hint for your test. And given a graph, and it was like this. So I'm going to sketch it. Let's say you had to sketch it. This would be our negative 4 and 7. Why is it negative 4 and 7? Well, because this is 4 over, and this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up, let's assume. What's the polar form? You need two things. You need r, and you need theta. Let's get r. R is always a squared plus b squared, square rooted. What's a squared and b squared? It's 4 and 7. What's that? 4 squared plus 7 squared. That would be root 65. You can keep it like that or give a decimal. The theta is always tan inverse of b over a. So in this case, 7 over 4. And before I start, I'll ask Ahmed this. Ahmed, which quadrant am I in right now? Ahmed, are you gone? He's not here. Anybody, what quadrant am I in? Second. Quadrant 2. That means whatever I do, I need to do 180 minus that angle that I get. This will be the angle I'm talking about. So when I do tan inverse of 7 over 4, I get 60 point, let's say 3, 60.3 degrees, which really, if I go ahead and take 180 minus this, I end up getting 119.7. Okay, so my most important pieces are the r and the theta, which I have. The theta should make sense because look, it's gone to 90, and then it's a little bit more than 90. It's at 120 or so, 119. So this makes sense. Of course, this is the angle I'm looking for, is this guy. So I need to write my final answer in polar form. So what's my polar form? It would be root 65. I can just write the angle, 119.7. Halas, you're finished. That would be a very good long answer question for this section. That would be a very good long answer question for this section. That would be a very good long answer question for this section. Okay, for 3, you need to know your multiply and division rules. Simple. I'll do one in a second. For the next one, you need to know that, of course, -1 is the -1 square root equals j. For 5, you need to remember the conjugate. You remember how to do the conjugate? I'll start it for you. I won't do the whole thing. You would have to do this. You see j's on bottom. So you want to multiply it by negative of that. You know, whatever the complex term is, get the negative, minus 3 over 3 minus 2j. And you want to multiply that by 3 plus 2j, 3 plus 2j. And you would work those out, and you would be able to, that would delete all the complex terms. The answers for this are all online. I just want to get through a smattering of this. The next one, we did this on your first assignment. I'm not going to review it now. This is a nice one to review, though. Change this to rectangular form. It's currently in exponential form. So how do we get from exponential form to rectangular form? And again, all the solutions are online for this. They're not super clear. They're good enough. Well, we need to know, first of all, what the radius is and what the angle is, because that'll help us get to polar form, which we can then get to rectangular form. What's r here? It's worth a mark, and it's super easy. It's 5. It's 5. The r is the number in front. Just the 5. The theta, in this case, is 2 pi over 3, but we need to get that into degrees. So what we do, how do we multiply it to get to degrees? We need to cancel the pi. How do we cancel the pi? Put pi on bottom and put 180 on top. If you do that, it cancels the radians out, and it'll become a angle in degrees. 2 times 180 divided by 3 is 120 degrees. Okay, so now what I have is I have this. I have 5 cosine of 120 plus j sine of 120. Don't forget that this is our polar form. And I got it in polar form because now I can just multiply through and it'll give me rectangular form. That's the whole point. So let's multiply through. Some students like to say that it's, you know, r cos theta and r sine theta. So A equals r cos theta, B equals r sine theta. And that's perfectly fine. You can do that. I just like to think of it as opening the brackets. So what's 5 cos of 120? It gives me negative 5 over 2. I'll let you, worry about that on your own. And the next one gives us a little fancier number, which you can write as a decimal if you want. That would be our final answer. Now it's rectangular form. This is now rectangular form. How do I know it's rectangular form? Well, because I can see a piece and I can see a B piece. And that's important. It needs to always have an A and a B piece if it's in rectangular form. All right, so get that back in your memory banks. I'm going to keep going because I want to make sure I cover as much as possible. Change this to exponential form. Very good question. Thank you for asking. We did a very similar one just then. Let's go through it. How do we get r? 8 squared plus b squared. I'll go back if you want to take a look at that. Keep it on the page. What's 8 squared plus 6 squared? Well, that would be 10. Theta is tan inverse of 6 over 8. And let's see, 6 over 8 gives me 36.9. The problem is I didn't make a sketch, so how am I supposed to know which quadrant this is in? So you should always sketch it. It goes left and up. So we're lucky. This is going to be the exact same quadrant as last time. Which quadrant's that? Quadrant 2. So we need to say 180 minus the angle that we're given here. So really, that gives us 143.1 degrees. Yeah. So we have our radius, or we have our theta. We need to now change that into exponential form because exponential form looks like this. So I need theta in radians. So we'll multiply that by pi over 180. And I'll get my true theta, or my exponential theta, or whatever you want to call it, theta in radians, which is, let's see, 2.5, I think. 143.1 times pi over 180. 2.5. Okay, so long story short, we needed r and we needed theta. And for exponential form, this needs to be in radians. So we have 10 e to the power of 2.5 j. And I indeed have my r and my theta in radians. So I'm finished. So I could have asked the exact same question, but asked it for polar form, which I did already earlier on this page, okay? So it shouldn't come as any surprise. Just let me know if you have questions. Say, sir, slow down, I need help. Just let me know. But otherwise, I'm going to keep going because I want to cover as much as I can. All right, next one. Perform the indicated operations, then change your answer to rectangular form, use 2 decimal places. Okay, so this is multiply and division rules, and then we need to change polar to rectangular. Let's do it. What's our rules? Well, when we multiply, the r's multiply, thetas add. When you divide, r's divide, thetas subtract. Okay, let's do that. I'll do the top and bottom separate first. So this will be, what's 12 times 8? It's 96. And then my thetas, they're multiplied, so I add 238 plus 122. That's 360. On bottom, what's 3 times 4? 12. What's 57 plus 33? 90. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. This is 96 divided by 12. It's 8. 360 minus 90 is 270. And we're done. Now, it said change your answer to rectangular form. So this is really the first step. There's 2 steps. First step is get that in polar form. Rectangular form is very easy, though. By the way, let me just make sure you know what I'm doing. This and this multiplied gives this. This and this added gives this. And same story for the bottom. Then when you divide, of course, you do the regular rules. Those are easy. Now, for the next one, it's A cos theta, B sine theta. And so what we should get is 8 times cosine 270 is 0. Okay. 0. 8 times sine of 270 is negative 8. Or in other words, negative 8j is our final answer here. Okay, that's rectangular form. Okay. I just got an email from Elsadeg. Yes, attendance is always required. That goes for everybody. If you're not attending your courses, you will start getting notices from the college that you need to be coming. So even though it's online, you need to attend all the classes. Okay, 10 is de Moivre's theorem. We did that on the first assignment. I'm not going to go back through that, but you know, it's not very complicated. Just make sure that you review what we did. I'm going to keep on going. Any questions before I move on from this worksheet? I hope you're getting, you know, I hope it's all getting back in your head. You're like, oh yeah, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. I think you can do it. I'm not going to make it some crazy test. I'm going to make it fair. The second one, let me see, same basic ideas. Let's see if there's something I pointed out. Change to polar, then exponential. We've done that. Represent the following number graphically and give its rectangular form. Okay, well, first of all, let's give it in rectangular form. This would be 4.7 cosine of 300. That's 2.35. 4.7 sine of 300 is minus 4.07j. So I would just go ahead and start a point wherever, go over by 2 and down by 4. So over by 2 in a little bit, down by 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 in a little bit. So it would look sort of like this, more or less. That's kind of the whole question. I would probably ask you that backwards. I would give you a vertex, give you an arrow, and you tell me what it is in rectangular form. That's a big hint. I'll give you an arrow, tell me what it is in rectangular form. Okay. Multiply in polar form, then change the answer to rectangular form. Well, we just did that in the previous page, and then de Moivre's theorem. Change to polar and then to rectangular form. We've done that as well. So these are all similar review questions. There's tons of practice there if you want it. Perform the indicated operation, express the result in polar form and rectangular form. The same idea, you know, if you want a little review. You multiply these two. So what's 8 times 5.5? It's 44. And you add the exponents. 5.3 plus 0.77. That's 6.07j on top. To get the polar form, you already have r equals 44, and the theta, you just take 6.07, multiply it by 180 over pi, because you're going from radians 2 degrees, and you get your answer, and then you convert to rectangular form. Okay? So I'm not going to do that. I want to do a couple other ones. This test is worth 30%. Both tests are worth 30% to a total of 60 of the year. Okay. So in functions, let's review a little bit of this. Of course, I don't have time to do all of it, but there's tons of practice there for you to do. Let me try 6 and 7. So let me go through these slowly. The first question here would be solving for y. That would be your hint. Yeah, there's 2 tests on it. That would be your hint, solve for y. For the second one, it's composite functions. Put one function inside the other. For the third one, it's a question asking about domain. You would graph it first. Would be the smart thing to do. For the fourth one, it's range of piecewise. I would not ask this. For the fifth one, reflections and translations. This one I would ask. Let's try this. If the point 2, 1 is on the graph of this, what is the corresponding point on the graph of this? Okay, so we have 2 things. We have to shift it. Well, if it's -3 here, it would shift up 3. I've deleted the negative, by the way, so you can do that too. Delete that negative out. And then what does this do? This would shift left or right? Which one? Well, if it's plus, you go the other way, left. Plus normally means right, but we go the opposite. So shift left by 1. So our point that we were given was 2, -1. But we want to shift it up by 3 and shift it left by 1. So what we end up getting is 1, 2. To make it more clear, that means you need to shift this. You need to subtract 1 from the x value. You need to add 3 to the y value. And that's a very, very nice, simple multiple choice. So hopefully that rings a bell. Yes, of course you can use Desmos. 1,000,000% you should use Desmos. There's no reason why you shouldn't use it to help you. Okay? This question, of course, wouldn't help. It wouldn't help you very much. But for any question that you think it would help you with, definitely go ahead and do it. So I'm going to try this one. If the function is, actually, let me try to focus on something else. I'll focus on some, let's see. You guys are not super strong at domain and range. So I'm going to find, okay, I'm going to jump around. Again, you have these notes, you have these all posted online if you need them. I'm just going to jump and try to focus on domain. Yeah, that's why I want to cover this. So let me just look at a bunch of graphs so you can get the idea of the domain and range, because a lot of you are struggling with that. Okay. First of all, determine whether or not the graph represents a function. So I'm going to just write yes or no for that. So this one, yeah, it's a function. Yes, it's a function because it passes the VLT, the vertical line test. Okay. The domain of this, let's talk about it. What are all the possible x values? Well, in this case, the maximum x value is 4, and it looks like it goes on forever to the left. So in this case, x must be less than or equal to 4, and that would be enough. For the range, let me make this a different color here. It's all your possible x values, so this is less than 4. For the range, what are all the possible y values? This isn't the greatest looking graph, but actually think about what's the smallest possible y value. Well, y equals 0 is the smallest. And then there actually isn't any restriction on the y, so the y would be everything bigger than or equal to 0. That's how these are done. For the inverse, if I ask the inverse, you know, the domain and range of the inverse, they would be switched. Which means that the domain would now be x is greater than or equal to 0. Range is now y less than or equal to 4. So you'll notice what used to be the domain is now given for range. What used to be the range is now given for domain. Just notice, you just go backwards. I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we don't. So the next one, is it a function? Yes, passes the vertical line test. What's the domain? The domain in this case, it could be any x value. It's clear it goes forever to the left and forever to the right. There's no restriction, so it can be any value. The range, in this case, is there any value that y could not be? Well, it can be 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to a million. It can be 0, -1, -2, -3, all the way to -1 million. So it could be all of the possible y values. I'm going to keep going. What about these? Okay, I can clearly see a problem with this. What about the domain and the range here? Well, x values. What are the possible x values? It looks like everything except for this. It never touches this asymptote. That means that the domain, x can never be 0. For the y, it looks like the y value can also never be 0. So we'd say y can never be 0. It can be everything else. So those are the main conditions, okay? As long as that's in the domain and range, you'll be okay. For this one, the next one, first of all, by the way, this is a function. Yes, it is a function. This one is not a function. The domain can be, well, these are all x values that are okay. These are all possible x values. There are no x values above that point. There's nothing above 3. So we say x is everything below 3 or equal to 3. The range, it looks like there's no restriction on what y can be. For example, y could be 3, 2, 1, 0. All these y values exist, and it goes forever in both directions. And so y can be anything. Y can be any real number. All right, this is the big idea here. Again, trying to push in as much work as I can here. I wish I had 2 hours. What about this? Someone give me the domain and the range for this one. See if you're following along. It's definitely a function. Anyone have any ideas? What are the possible x values? It looks like it's bound by this. It can be anything in between. X can be 0, x can be 1, x can be 2, but x can't be bigger than 3, and x can't be less than 3. So what we would say is that x needs to be less than or equal to 3, but also greater than or equal to -3. So I'm pretty sure that's what you were saying, Mohammed. Greater than or equal to 3, less than or equal to -3. You're backwards, actually. Remember, x needs to be smaller than 3, and x needs to be bigger than 3. It always opens towards the bigger one. And then y in this case needs to be smaller than 4, but greater than 0. Okay? So be careful with these. Range causes trouble for students. It's not going to be a massive part of the test, but it is something that you need to understand. And if you can look at the graph and figure it out, it's a huge, huge, huge help. Okay? Let me do this last one, f. What's the domain? Well, first of all, yes, it's a function. What's the domain? The domain can be anything bigger than x equals 0. And the range, it looks like, can be, again, these are y values, anything bigger than -2. As long as it's greater or equal to -2, we're okay. Because this could be a y value, this could be a y value, this could be a y value. Everything up here could also be a y value because it goes forever. So on the function, you're like, well, where is y a million? And you're like, up there. Where is y -5? Well, it doesn't exist because it's too small. It's a function that doesn't exist down there. Okay. All right. So I didn't get to everything that I wanted to get to, but let me just remind you. I'll stop the recording here. Bye-bye.